Hey, it's Jacob Lamb with TrueFire. There are two moments in a guitarist's life where we seem to plateau and get really discouraged. And that's the beginner to intermediate transition, and then the intermediate to advanced transition. Oftentimes we plateau because we don't know where to go next. So here's a 5-step roadmap to take you from a beginner, late beginner guitarist to the intermediate stage. These are skills and techniques that you may have heard of, but we're just going to do a 40,000-foot overview of them right now. And if you want to learn more, there are links in the description to dive into each of these ideas in more detail. Now, every one of the other 4 skills here is built on understanding and knowing the fretboard really well. But thankfully, we actually only need 2 rules to understand the whole thing, so there's not a lot of memorization here. First of the 2 rules, you probably already know, it's the names of the strings on the guitar. E, A, D, G, B, E. I like elephants and donkeys grow big ears to help remember that. Now, the most important rule is that every single gap between 2 notes is 2 frets away. So for example, on the A string, if I'm moving from A to B, I'm moving from A 2 frets to B, okay? Now, the only gaps where there's an exception to that rule are B to C and E to F. Those are 1 fret away. So if we know that every note is 2 frets away except B to C and E to F, well, guess what? That's the whole fretboard. So again, on that A string, we can go, okay, A to B, that's 2 frets. B to C is 1 fret away, so I know that's a C note. C to D is 2 frets. D to E is 2 frets. E to F is that 1 fret gap. So we can use that method to work our way up any one of the strings, because we know the names of the strings. All of a sudden, we can at least count and find every note on the fretboard, which is wild. And the more we count and find and get comfortable, the less we need to actually count up. And just by playing, we kind of naturally memorize this range of the fretboard. Now, knowing the fretboard is amazing, and as we get into more intermediate songs, you're going to naturally come across more lead lines, tabs, and that means lead skills. So a couple of the quick ones we want to just cover are hammer-ons, pull-offs, bends, and slides. These are pretty much everything you need to craft some really awesome solos and riffs. We'll start with bends, because they're the most intuitive. Bending a note, we are actually just picking a note and then bending it. Now, there are 2 main types of bends that we should learn for the early intermediate stage. That's a half-step bend and a whole step bend. Now, again, we're counting just 1 fret and 2 frets away. A half-step bend is when we take a note. I'll start here from the 7th fret of my 2nd string, my B string. We take a note and we say, okay, I want to bend this up a half step. That's 1 fret above. So I'm looking to bend it to this tone. So I'll take that note and bend up until, okay, that sounds pretty good. A whole step bend is, of course, taking that note and bending it up to this note 2 frets away, or a whole step up. Now, when we get to the top of a note, this isn't official, this isn't sciencey, this is just skill and artist development. When we get to the top of a note, it's really good form to add a little bit of vibrato in there. So we don't want to hold the note just static, but we want to shake it a little bit. So we get to the top, and we just give it that little bit of life that makes it sing. Now let's look at slides. They're essentially the same thing. We're moving a note up, or this time down, but we're just taking a note and sliding it without picking it. We can slide 1 fret, 2 frets, still add that vibrato in, 2 frets down, whatever note we need to slide to. We could even do a huge slide from low all the way to the top. Sliding's one of those things that you look at it and you go, well, that makes perfect sense. And then if you're me, you either over or undershoot. So it's really good practice to pick a note and then slide up to it from different frets and make sure that you're getting that muscle memory down and not over or undershooting it. Now, hammer-ons and pull-offs are two different sides of the same coin. A hammer-on is when we play a note and we actually hammer our finger on a fret higher without picking it. So if I'm picking a note here, the 5th fret of the 3rd string, we'll say, I can hammer on maybe a full step above without ever picking. We could also do that from open strings to a fret. Pull-offs are the exact opposite. We're playing a higher fret, and without picking, pulling our finger off to a fret below. So I could play the 7th fret that I hammered up to, and then kind of use this 3rd finger as a pick, coming down and out. So I'm playing that next fret without needing to use this hand. We could also do that again from a fret to an open string. Now, why are these things useful? Slides, bends, hammer-ons, pull-offs, they all help us to, first of all, make different sounds in our solo, right? Hammer-ons, slides, bends. These can all get us to the same note, but sound different from one another, so there's some artistry in there. But they also all free up our picking hand to be able to maybe do some other things it needs to do while our left hand manages the notes in the melody. Another intermediate skill that's great to get down is to start blending chords and melody in the same guitar part. So you get to be 2 musicians in one. Twice the musician, same amount of person. I don't know. There are 2 really effective ways to do this. And the first and most simple way is to take a chord, and when we're playing around with it, we're adding in either tones from the chord or tones from the scale around the chord. So I have a C chord right here, and I can use my pinky, maybe take my 1st finger off. Right, these are all notes available to me. So the more I'm familiar with the scale, the more I can play around with the chord. And this really brings chords to life, or we can do it for specific songs, like, who knows what this song is? So that's one method, and then another way is that we can map out a melody, whatever our lead line is, on a single string, right? So that same song I just played, we can map out to just one string. And then we start building chords around that note. So the first method is prioritizing the chord and playing notes around it. The second method is prioritizing the note and then building chords around it. So I need to find a C chord around here. And that's where knowing other techniques comes in too, like inversions, or even, dare I say it, the caged system is going to help us find chords around notes. The 4th crucial skill here is building timing and rhythm. So we need our right hand to bring our playing to life a little bit. And we can do that with a few different techniques. We can do that with different strumming patterns. We can do that with dynamics and accenting different notes. We can do that with my favorite technique, which is called string splitting. So when I'm picking down, I'm hitting the lower strings, and when I'm picking up, I'm hitting the higher strings, and that brings a chord to life. That's almost like a finger-picking sound without the finger-picking. We can also add rhythm with ghost notes, where we're muting with our left hand by not pressing all the way down, and that gives us some kind of cool right? Some rhythm there. We're our own percussionist all of a sudden. So bringing in rhythm with all these other techniques, lead lines too, that really brings our playing into the intermediate stage. Finally, everybody's least favorite word, we need to master bar chords. Bar chords are really important and helpful, even though they're difficult, because they help us to play sharp and flat chords without needing to learn new shapes. If I need to play a G sharp and I'm not sure what that chord shape is, I'm kind of up a creek without a paddle. But if I know my bar chords, then I can say, well, that's just G moved up a fret. There's G sharp, A sharp, right? We're all over the fretboard just with bar chord shapes. Now, here's a tip, 2 tips that really help because I know they're difficult. First is when we're playing our bar chord, a lot of people lay their first finger down completely straight. And that can be fine, except that our first finger really bends that way a lot. One way it doesn't bend, or at least shouldn't bend, is to the side. So it can be really useful if we're using our finger as a bar to actually roll it to the side a little bit. That's going to help us get more of a grip on those strings. If we're not using the middle finger, maybe we're playing a minor chord, we can use it to even help push that first finger down and get a nice clear note out. And if we're still having trouble with bar chords to a degree where we don't even want to touch them, we can separate the strings and play partial bar chords. On the lower end, that's almost like a power chord. Maybe we can get one note more down. On the higher end, you get this kind of shape right here. You could do with your pinky or your third finger. Then all of a sudden, you have the top end and the lower end of bar chords. The more we practice them, the more comfortable we can be with the full thing. So if you're a late beginner guitarist, and you start getting comfortable with your fretboard, comfortable with lead line techniques, comfortable combining chords and melody, timing and groove and rhythm, and bar chords, you're going to be in the early intermediate stage and have the steps you need to start pushing forward. There are other techniques, of course, that are useful. I highly recommend on your roadmap you add in inversions, which is moving chords up the neck, and the caged system, which is also moving chords up the neck. They're just more tools to have in your toolbox. Now, again, everything you need to dive into these more is down in the description. TrueFire has got so many resources for guitarists to grow, and we'll see you there.